Hello, everybody. Good evening. And today is the second lecture provided by Professor Zhu. And I know her for a long time. And we have been working in Hong Kong and Macau for many years. And we have been also attending international conferences for many places. And Professor Zhu is one of the very important figure in the Buddhist artistic studies. Basically, she is an art historian. And she has published many papers and also 2 books. One of her major publications is recently published by Cambridge. It's a very important contribution to Buddhist art. And of course, there's also another publication in Chinese many years ago. Apart from this, she has also produced many different papers. And today's lecture, she will discussing and compare the Buddhist temples and in India and China, and compare their images and deities, what the differences and similarities. So now I just hand over and invite Professor Zhu to give the lecture.
Okay, thank you, Professor Guangxin, for your introduction, and thank you for having me here. Also, thank everyone for attending this talk. As you can see, my talk today is about, how to arrange images of deities in Buddhist temples. This may sound a little bit boring, the topic. Statues and the paintings of deities, they are just so common in Buddhist art. And no Buddhist text does not mention any deity. So everyone probably has seen these deities, somehow, somewhere, and you probably feel you know it all. So what exactly, is the question, and what the topic is really about? So in essence, today, what I'm going to talk about is actually the worship of non-Buddhist deities in Buddhist practice. So for instance, how about let me ask you this, because I'm very often approached by students asking these questions. So they very often, they would see images of Guan Yu, images of earth god in Buddhist temple, in mainland, in China. So, I so often encounter the kind of argument, explanation, saying something about the Taoism, the Buddhism, it seems, Buddhism somehow sort of absorb something sort of a Taoist, or it was explained as a signification. Buddhism became Chinese-ized, or it was explained as a decline, degeneration, or secularization of Buddhism. So you probably, if you're ever interested in Buddhism, you probably encounter this in all those issues and heard this kind of argument, in the past. So this is where I started. So all those arguments, especially the argument about, secularization, Chinese-ization, all those arguments has this assumption that originally Buddhism was pure. They wouldn't have deities like this. So this is how we start. So to work out this problem, or originally, I try to explain to my student what's going on, and then I have to trace back all the way to India. So all those issues about, how non-Buddhist deities became Buddhists if we track this issue from Buddhist texts, that's actually relatively easy, relatively clear. We know how they became, the deities became Dharma protectors, Buddhist protective deities. And we also know how, in principle, what's the Buddha's attitude towards, other religions. But there are still issues when we look at images. So let me ask you, for example, whenever we come to the images, the issue would become complex and not that clear, similar to what happened to Chinese Buddhist art. For instance, we probably know, Lokapala, heavenly king figures, they existed from very early time in early Indian Buddhist art. Their place is actually at the gateway. We also have images, for instance, Surya, the sun god, also very early time at Bodh Gaya reading. So if we encounter images like this, can we assume that those images were for worship? So this is sort of the question, I'm concerning. Basically, this is about worshiping non-Buddhist deities. And I approach this problem from the visual representation, especially at the convention, how to represent them in the iconographic plan of a Buddhist temple. So I, trace back to Indian practice. So in one way, we work out, the iconographic plan, which you probably never heard about. And in another way, this talk is also mainly about the transmission. The Indian practice transmitted in China, we will see what's going on, what was the original core and what was actually changed in the practice in Chinese Buddhist art. So therefore, it would be very clear. Today, most of my time, I would talk about what happened in the very early time, what happened in the in Indian temple, how they, how images of deities appear there. And then the second part will move to China and try to see, what's the similarity, what's the differences. So this is the outline today. So let's start for the first part. The deity images in Indian monastery. I have to say it's very complex, and in Indian, it developed over a very long period of time, from the very beginning, to the maybe the 13th century, and different regions may have different practice. So therefore, we don't have sort of like a set, a fixed sort of like a plan that doesn't exist. And also something very unfortunate. So today, if you go to museums, you may find steles, stone sculptures of Indian art. Most of them, we actually do not know their original contact, their original location in a temple. So this is the complex sort of a situation, very poor situation for my topic, for a scholar. However, benefited from, decades of studies on Indian art. I can at least make some comments from the poor information I gathered. I can make some sort of comments on some kind of general principle and some kind of phenomena. Before I sort of give you the answer, we need to clarify a few concepts, in order to understand, the function of those images. The first one, very important, is about the nature of the deities. For the nature of the deities, I want you, from now on, establish two concepts. Deities in the heavens, in Buddhist term, they called deva, deities living in the heavens, and deities on the earth, thonical deities. So deities in the heavens, that's sort of like maybe Vedic, in origin, Vedic gods, Brahma, Indra, and so on. Those deities, you would have people in Shakyamuni's time, they would have Vedic ritual in meticulous detail, instruction. They have to be performed by Brahmin priest in terms of the way how they worship. And in the same time, you also have the worship of sort of natural spirit. Well-known ones would be like Yaksha and Naga. They live in the same space as human beings or mingled with human beings. And in a way, their practice may be similar, if we have to use a modern word, may be similar to popular religion. People make offerings to them in exchange, wish for their protection, the prosperity, making offering. This set of practice is called the puja practice. So this is a first concept of a notion. The second one, I want also you establish this idea about territorial deities and non-territorial deities. Territorial deity refers to those deities on earth. They are actually bounded with very specific area. They have their own domain. A yaksha, a naga might be sort of a deity of a village, of a mountain, of a wood. A naga would be related to water. So they are in a way like when we talk about Mazu, originally in sort of Fujian, in a particular area. And non-Buddhist deity would certainly refers to the first one we mentioned, the deities in the heaven, heavenly deities. And also, translocal deity. This, we can use our Mazu example, originally local, but then sort of her power extended in other area, and also all later Hindu gods. So they were sort of territory. So those concepts would be very important. Maybe you didn't hear about them, but they are related to how they were represented, how they functioned in actual practice. So the second one would be, we now know different types of deities. Then it's better, now it's easier to understand what is the Buddha's attitude. towards those territorial deities worshipped by local folks with puja. This one, the Buddha's attitude would be accepted. For heavenly gods, especially those sort of worshipped by Brahmin priest with Vedic ritual, the Buddha has very clear attitude against them, not accepted them. Fundamental principle is this. Brahmin priests worship them as the ultimate gods. And in Buddhist perspective, all gods, they are still in the cycle of samsara, in the cycle of rebirth. So therefore, it's useless to worship them. You won't reach your salvation. Later on, you can trace back this very early, but gradually later on, we also have a number of other deities, worship of other deities developed, centered around Shiva, Vishnu, and powerful gods. And when this movement sort of emerged in India, they also sort of adopt the puja type of practice. And this sort of group of deity, this kind of practice, as you can see, pujas there. So they are also sort of the practice of common folks. This movement developed rapidly since the Gupta period. So this is another layer. This I already explained. So the Buddha's attitude towards them are very different. Now, to the function of images. So if you see representations of images in a Buddhist temple, one type, the image is for worship. If the image for worship, probably the image is independent and has an independent shrine, it's enshrined or placed on an altar. So that type of image, that's the image for worship. And the image appeared in Buddhist art, they can also appear as attendant. See, it's only attendant. The major image is the Buddha, the deities, as a attending figure, or like in a narrative. Or as decoration. So for the second group, if we find representations in second group, then that's also clear. They don't indicate worship. So this is another level of concept we clarify before we explain. So now let's look at how images may set up. Worshipping the territorial deities, they were very common in India when Buddhism first emerged. Whenever the Buddhists wanted to build a monastery, a temple in a place, there must be a pre-existed local spirit already in charge of the area. So this is the the situation the Buddhists faced. So in the instruction given by the Buddha, they should enshrine local deities in Buddhist monastery, vihara, in Buddhist monastery. So the local deity in this way, they can receive, continue receiving offerings from the local community as well as from the monks, and in return, the deity offer protection and the sort of the prosperity in his domain. We have abundant examples to show, the evidence about territorial deities in Buddhist texts. For example, in Digha Nikaya, we have the Buddha's last teaching, final teaching to people at Vaishali. This is in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra. So the Buddha instructs the people here in the city to continue worship and make offerings at the Yaksha shrine throughout of the city and the countryside. The legend of the Buddha's life is filled with instances of the Buddha himself converting local spirits. After the Buddha converted the local deity, then the Buddha would instruct, to set up a shrine for the deity inside the monastery. The well-known example would be Yakshi Hariti, or you can say it's a Rakshasi. Set up, the Buddha explained clearly that, Harati's shrine should be set up in every Buddhist monastery. Harati, by the way, Guizimu, so she was this sort of baby-eating demon that being converted to Buddhism. There were other examples in the Mathura region. The Buddha converted the famous Yaksha Gadava, and along with him, other 2,500 yakshas. And the Buddha, asked the Buddhist community to set up 2,500 viharas in the name of those yakshas. This is recorded in the Vinaya of Mula Saraswati school. So if you set up the vihara in the name of yaksha, so in a way those yaksha, those viharas, they are also the shrines of those yaksha. Oh, sorry, I lost this Y one. So, this is a problem occurred in the very beginning in Buddhism. Also, when Buddhism spread to a new area, you would encounter this problem again. So later on, we not only have the Buddha be the person who convert local deities, we would also have tons of stories of well-known monks performing this task, this job. So like monk Mahantika, converted the well-known Naga king Aravala, Apavala in Sanskrit, and 84,000 Nagas, Gandharva Yakshas, and Kumbhadakas of the Himalayas. So this is after his effort. Buddhism was able to spread out smoothly in Kashmir and Gandhara area. Also, the well-known story about Padmasambhara, how he converted this local spirit in order to set up the first Buddhist temple in Tibet. And, he made the deity to make a vow to become Buddhist protector. And this deity became Doja Draden in Buddhism, sort of like the leader of Dharma protectors of this area. So we have tons of sort of examples about how territorial deity. So this is the first character, first group. Territorial deities, they're so important. Definitely, Buddhists need to convert them and set up their shrine. So all those was textual evidence. And then we also have, archaeological evidence. If we look at Buddhist sites in the very beginning, in the very beginning, they probably have altar with no images. But we do have examples. They should be very common. But this, for instance, in Pitakura, Buddhist temple site, cave site of the 2nd BC, belongs to the very early stage. We have a Naga image at the doorway of Vihara cave number 4. And at Shanxi, we know there are 16 Naga sculptures scattered in the area, in the water pond and sort of like a water-related area. And one pair Nagini images, they were actually inside the temple complex, probably sort of 5th century. Originally, their place should be very close to Shanxi Stupa 1. So this is, it's very hard to find the evidence, but they were probably sort of like the territorial deity, the Naga who control those those areas, and then enshrined the worship by local Buddhists. We do have one case. Very fortunately, we have inscription. This is happened, we find in Ajanta, Naga cave at the entranceway. So this is Pitakura. Here's Ajanta. So what you see is a water valley. So this is the river passing by. Ajanta, very known, well-known cave site in India. It's been used for centuries, but the most of the images, the golden time would be the 5th century. So this is the caves along this sort of river valley, and original gate would be in the center somewhere. The main gate, main entrance beneath the cave 16, and just nearby the gate, there's a cave dedicated to Naga. This is a cave. This is a Naga image. And the inscription is found in cave 16. So this is actually a cave patronized by a minister, a major minister of the king of Varahadeva. So according to the inscription, it is explained the original mountain and this river valley is the home of this Naga king. And since people started to build monasteries, Buddhist monasteries, the Naga king became homeless. So therefore, the patron of cave 16 made a home for the Naga king. In order to give the Naga a place to live. So you see how the images of Naga yakshas, large images, they may regard it as sort of the territorial deity of the area, and the people enshrine them, worshiping them. This has been a practice, very common for very long. This is a later example in Nalanda, a small temple with a large stone sculpture of Naga king. This is at the southeast corner of the main stupa at Nalanda. So those territorial deities, if they are powerful enough, then people from far away would come over to worship them. And when people travel to other areas, they bring their sort of deities, or at least the belief of the deities to other areas. So they can become translocal, become more powerful deities that detached from the particular area they originally attached to. So this is very common, and it is already started from Shakyamuni's time. If we look at the text, they already started from Digha Nikaya. And especially when they adopted into Buddhism, they travel with Buddhism, spread out with Buddhism. So they became translocal. When they become translocal, they also become more symbolic, especially their images. So I'll give you examples from texts. There are two well-known texts in the Digha Nikaya. These two texts describe how deities, various type of deities from Deva in the heaven, and yakshas, nagas of particular sort of places. They actually name them, from here, there, very specific places. Naga from here and there came over to visit the Buddha. All the text, the description, the teaching of the text is the Buddha introduced them to his disciples. You need to know this is whom, this is whom from where, what's the purpose? For protection. Those deities, they gave their Dharanis the way how to call them for help. So those are the purpose of this text. So some individual, very powerful yakshas and nagas became protectors of the whole Buddhist community. And this is sort of like a standard textual base for such practice. And that's Buddha's instruction. and Buddha's instruction, you can call them for help, although they are originally only territorial deity. We also have actually evidence this being practiced. For instance, in the Mahamayuri Vaidya Rajan suture, this is the suture of peacock, golden peacock. They provide a list of over 100 names of yakshas, rakshas, losha from very specific places. That's the deities that you can depend on their protection. It doesn't matter, regardless where you live. And among those very powerful, popular translocal deities, well known in later time, like Hariti, like Atavaka, Mani Bhadra. So they are the examples. So Hariti is originally from this area. Atavaka originally from the suburb, the wild field outside the city, and Mani Bhadra is in this area. So how they are all well-known names in Buddhist history. Images of them even present was sort of existed in Chinese Buddhist art. So there were sutures, tons of sutures mentioned about them, and there are also very specific sutures just dedicated to them. Introduce the Dharani of them. So they are the list of those sutures, and we also have evidence with images. The well-known example, excuse me, would be images of yakshas from Barhoot. Barhoot is a well-known Buddhist site of the 2nd century BC. They are the sort of yaksha images carved on the railing. This is the only case. We actually have inscription with very specific names, and many of these names, fortunately, we can find them in Buddhist texts. So we know who are they. Who are they, from which area? They are not from Barhoot. So this is very interesting. So now we have images of translocal deities. The question would be, did people worship them, make offerings to them, to those deities? Were they, if translocal deities appeared in Buddhist art, were they meant for worship? Occasionally, a specific devotee, see you visit the site, if you wish to make offering, you want to perform prostration, koto to them, that's fine. But in general, we have to understand, they are on pillars, they are on railings, they are facing outside, they appear like a worshiper. They were not set up as shrine images. So this is the sort of one of the major nature of those images. The other thing quite interesting would be, as I said, that the Barhoot is only case that we have inscription. Later on, it is common to see very large sort of images of yaksha or local deities of this type, but we do not have inscriptions anymore. see, if we do not have inscription, you look at this image, just by iconography, they are not identifiable. So therefore, just by looking at the images, they are very generic. They are only generic deity, generic yaksha, yaksha or naga, and their appearance would be like devotee, and maybe the way, the location, they're at the reading, facing outside, maybe symbolically they appear like guardian, but more as symbolic image rather than altar image. So this is for image of translocal deity, generic representation. Anyway, for local deities, eventually the symbolic representation became standard decoration for Buddhist temple. So this is the origin, and then they became standard. Here's the brief sort of conclusion for the translocal deities. Symbolic decoration for Buddhist temples. They became symbolic decoration. A few very powerful ones like Hariti, they may have altar in the temple. So let's look at the first type, how they became symbolic decoration. So how to decorate a Buddhist temple? The Buddha has an instruction recorded in the Vinaya of Mullah Saraswati school. This is very often cited. At the doorway, you should have figures of yaksha holding this and that. At the doorway of the Buddha hall, you should have yaksha holding this and that. At the dining hall, yaksha figure holding this and that. And the door of storehouse, yaksha again, a water house, a naga. And so on. So they became convention. Became sort of a temple decoration. Those figures, even though they may hold different things, they are not shrine images for worship. They became sort of temple decoration in nature. And we have tons of evidence of early Buddhist monetary site that we find large sized yaksha figure, naga figure depicted at the doorway. Also, here's the list where we can find them. In one way, they represent the symbolic presence of those deities. They are decoration, but they also beyond decoration. As original function, they have the power for protection, and fulfill humans' wish for abundance, and so on. In general, if we look at the history, this type of depiction, we would say that they, later on, those images became increasingly symbolic and became smaller. So here are some of the examples. Like this from Gandhara. Sometimes they appear as sort of like, on the pillar between the panels of narratives. So this is about the translocal deities, the first type, and here's the second type. They also have, what if they are, they have altars, shrine image. The best example would be Hariti. So Hariti originally from a particular area. She's the deity of the area, territorial deity, but the nature, the function of those type of deity may change. For instance, when Xuanzang traveled to this area, he observed that Hariti became already worshipped in the whole country. People pray to these goddess or yakshi for offspring. And here's this sort of image in 5th century. We can trace back. The earliest one would be in Gandhara, the 1st to the 3rd century. Ajanta one would be 5th century. This is Ajanta cave. The image would be in the shrine somewhere here. So very large Hariti image. So you can, as what we read from Buddhist text, Buddhist Viharas should enshrine them. We did find evidence of Buddhist temples. We see, shrines for Hariti. Not only that, from the archaeological sort of discoveries in Andhra, this area, we find out, archaeologists find out that most of the monasteries, they all have shrines for Hariti, and usually it's outside the dining hall. This actually, the archaeological evidence reflect what exactly described in Buddhist text. The Buddhist text described how the Buddha instruct the monks to enshrine Hariti throughout in all the temples. Then it's the duty of Hariti to protect the Buddha, the monk body, Sangha. So Hariti has another function as a patron deity of Sangha. We also have Yi Jing traveled to India in late 7th century. He observed that it is very common to see images or shrines of Hariti in Indian Buddhist monastery. It's either at the porch or next to the dining hall or the kitchen. And he also said that the local lay Buddhists would seek her for sort of a protection, seek her power, for her power when they have sickness and if they have a problem like no hair. So images or shrines of translocal deities, usually like this, they are in the secondary place in the temple complex. Or they are in a very particular location, and this is related to their function. So this is what we can observe. So we finished the territorial deity. Now let's move on to Deva. Images of in heaven would originally be like Brahma, Indra, and the 4 Lokapala. Deities in the heaven described in Buddhist texts, they were wise enough to recognize Shakyamuni's enlightenment, and they took the initiative, came over to worship the Buddha, venerate the Buddha, seek him for his teaching for the Dharma. And so this is a very different situation. The Buddha never needed to convert them, defeat them. So I give you example for instance, in Nikaya text, over 100, almost 200 visits by different gods was mentioned to the Buddha. So therefore, you can see this is a very different situation. Those deities, they appeared already in Shakyamuni's previous life. They also, part of Shakyamuni's life. They visited him during his different lives. So therefore, in early Buddhist art, those major gods, very often you would see them appear in narratives. Stories of Shakyamuni's previous life in Jatakas and in the life of Shakyamuni, and they appear as sort of Buddhist follower venerating the Buddha. Those are the major ones. The minor ones, they became decorative motif depicted in the Buddhist temple as part of the architecture decoration. Important thing would be in both of these two cases, those images, they are not shrine images for worship, not for worship for these gods. They are secondary in iconography or in an iconographic scheme of this temple decoration. So I give you like an example. We can go over one by one. For example, like Brahma. We don't have independent image of Brahma discovered in Buddhist temple. They appear only in narratives, the same as Indra. They often appear together. Surya has been sun god. Surya has been worshipped in India for very, very long. We can find them in Buddhist context. But in early times, see where are they? Like Rilin and Bodh Gaya, a lintel of Vihaya. And so anyway, so these are the examples. They are not big images for independent shrine image for worship. So this is the Bodh Gaya Rilin. This is the image. This is sort of like a one lintel, and you can see it in the one corner. So you understand this is the concept and contact. So they are not really independent shrine image for worship. Minor gods would be, for instance, Garuda, 金翅鸟, Gandharva, 甘达婆, Apsara, 飞天, and so on. So they often, you can see them as background figure, or temple decoration, architecture decoration, and the another level to understand this is what exactly the principle to set up sort of or to construct Buddhist temple, or actually stupa. The stupa represent the word of the Buddha, or a temple hall. The temple hall is regarded as a word, the word of the Buddha. So therefore, the idea that one principle to construct this is you think about the whole world. So therefore, deities appear very often has another symbolic meaning to construct this macrocosmos world. For instance, you may have the 4 Lokapala, the 4 deities of the 4 cardinal directions represented, and the minor deities. These minor deities, they are heavenly celestial beings. Therefore, they represent the celestial realm. Like they often appear on the ceiling, So that's where you often see the minor, deities, heavenly deities there. This the celestial realm. The Lokapala, 4 heavenly kings, they sort of also first appeared in Buddhist temples in India. The well-known example is at Barhut, and we also have, because we don't have inscription, we are not sure, but probably they meant to be the 4 Lokapala at Shanxi and also at Ajanta. So this refers to sort of like the structure of stupa. What is the word of the Buddha? Fundamentally, this is the cosmos centered around Mountain Sumeru. This is the profile. Here's the profile, the side view of Mountain Sumeru, this cosmos system, and this is the topographic view, you view from the very top. And this is the structure of stupa. See, you have the mount here, you have the extended heavenly realm, and this is your view, a stupa from the top. This is your view from top, the cosmological word structure in Buddhism. So therefore, you understand why they would place the 4 deities of the 4 cardinal directions in this way. So, enhance the meaning. This is the word of the Buddha. Hindu deity emerged, as I explained early on. They are like Shiva, Vishnu, and the goddess. There are also minor deities like Surya, Skanda, and Brahma, and so on. For those deities, they were converted to Buddhism as well. If we really, discuss how they appear in art, then we can trace back all the way to Kushan period. But usually, it's the Gupta period onward, we see more of them, except the goddess. Goddess would be a different story. So they can be depicted on architecture as symbolic decoration. They can also appear as independent image for worship. So images of Hindu gods in Buddhist temple complex are substantially increased from the Gupta period. Here's the example. We find them especially during the Tantra period, like Mahakala, like Mahakali, find more image of them, the booming of those sort of deity, image of deities in large size, independent, especially like from the 5th to 12th century. Those deities in Tantric Buddhism, they were regularly evoked, rituals performed to them, dedicated to them, performed by monks is part of the monks' regular practice. So this is the sort of like the situation we know. So unfortunately, we do not know in India how those images exactly they were placed in the monastery, but we do have scholars sort of calculated how many we find in terms of statistically proportion. For instance, for images from this area between 9th to 12th century, see this area. Big sort of stone sculptures, bronze sculptures, Buddha, Avalokitesvara, and Tara, 65%. Popular deities, 8%. Hindu deities, 11%. So they were quite important. I guess the situation would be similar to Tibetan temples. If you visit Tibetan temples, you can see altars of them somewhere. So I finished Indian part. So we can conclude for this part. Buddhists, they accept all deities worshipped by the populace and converted them into Dharma protectors of Buddhism. In a Buddhist temple plan, because on one level, the Buddhist temple is a sanctuary on the earth. So on this level, you have an altar of a local spirit set up at the entrance, as protection. And on another level, this is a sacred place or a word of the Buddha. Therefore, you have more cosmic sort of deities with more cosmic symbolism set up at a particular place. For instance, the 4 Lokapala at the cardinal directions, in the celestial deities, at upper place, and so on. You also have, in the same time, altars of very powerful non-territorial deities set up in the temple. They are in the secondary place and very specific places like dining hall, kitchen, the storehouse, and so on. For other places, they may also appear as attendants in narrative, attendants to Buddha image or Bodhisattva image, or they appear as decoration. So this is in general. So with those, I explained, all what happened in India. Then, for China, it is then self-evident, super clear. In China, through centuries of development, the Chinese temple, in terms of architecture and the arrangement of images, reached some kind of maturity, in the Sui and the Tang dynasty, and has been standardized since the Song dynasty, probably from the 10th century. And after that, Chinese Buddhism has some kind of standard temple plan. So in this kind of temple plan, this is probably, even if you visit a temple today, more or less you can encounter this. You would have like Vajrapani figure at the Sanmen or the gateway. So does it sound something we familiar? We just mentioned Vajrapani, in essence, yaksha. Place yaksha at gateway. Essence, in principle, Buddhist tradition. You have 4 heavenly kings, the 4 deities of the 4 cardinal directions, and the Weituo general in the entrance hall. So this is somehow not exactly the same, but we do have, the Lokapala, the deities of the 4 cardinal directions in India. So this is one, and also we have Tianshu in somewhere in the temple, like in a hall or a second side hall. Tianshu, this word means temple. So they are the deities regarded as temple protector. And we also have, this is described according to the way you visit a Buddhist temple, you continue going, you may pass Shanmen, pass the entrance hall, pass the side hall of Qielanshen, then you enter the main hall. In the main hall, you may encounter a set of group of deities. The common ones would be the 20 or 24 Zhu Tian. And if then after you visit the main hall, you come out somewhere in the temple complex, you may see an altar of earth god. And somewhere in the kitchen, which usually we don't visit, there should be a Jianzaishen. The god oversees, their meals, their cooking. And somewhere in the temple, very often would be on the back, on the side. You may even have an independent hall dedicated to other deities. Very often would be a local deity. Local deity can be dragon, can be other deities, and it's also common for the Chinese temple to have a hall dedicated to Kishtagarbha. Then you would see Yama inside. So if we look at this one, the ones in yellow color, somehow we can, trace them back to the tradition of India, and somehow the one I highlighted in blue, they are much different from the Indian tradition. So this is the Vajrapani, how the history, in the text, how we know they appeared very early, set up Vajrapani figure in Buddhist temple. This is Dulesi of the Liao dynasty of the image I showed you, very nice image. Also the 4 heavenly kings, the early example for in temple context would be in Donghuang from Northern Wei. In Donghuang, we can see them all the way to maybe 5 dynasties, Song dynasty. So we can see how they appeared at the doorway already, and later on they tend to be more sort of in the antechamber. We do not have early temples of these 4 heavenly kings, but we do have textual description, like in Yizhou Minhua Lu. So of the Tang dynasty, so we know they do have heavenly kings, so representing the doorway. But in the Tang dynasty, very often reading from the text, very often you have only two at one gateway. And somehow, since the Song Dynasty, the Chinese people invented the hall for heavenly kings, put all the four together. So this is how they changed. So originally the reason they put it there because of their meaning, because of their Indian tradition, but eventually developed in China. Chinese people put them together at the main entrance. Then somehow their meaning as God for the four cardinal directions weakened. So this is an example from Lin Yin Si. This is the Heavenly King hall. You have Maitreya in the center, then the four heavenly kings on the side, then you have Wei Tuo, always depicted, almost always depicted behind the Maitreya facing inward. So this would be another one, Wei Tuo image. Wei Tuo image in the entrance hall, standard in the temple plan of Buddhist temples in China, and the facing inward, think about why. So actually, Wei Tuo, a minor deity in the Indian origin, through reshaping in Chinese Buddhism, Wei Tuo became the patron deity of Sangha. So he faces inward. So this is a long story. I need another lecture to explain this. But anyway, so this is to explain his place in every temple, very similar to Hariti. Qielan Shen would be the protector of the temple. In a temple plan, very often they are near the entrance, maybe opposite the patriarch hall. We have in the Chinese tradition, like who we want to put inside would be the donor of, the famous temple of Jetavana at Shravasti. And, this garden was given by the prince. So the prince and the king, they also have the image in it, and also local deity. So this is the standard set in Qielan Tang. And this is a place you see Guan Yu. So Guan Yu, as a historical figure in China, he was buried in a particular place. He became a territorial deity of that place. When the Buddhists first built a temple in that place, he was converted. So this we know very clear, in our record. So then he became sort of a Buddhist, sort of a temple protector, Qielan Pusa. Then therefore, this is his standard place in Qielan Tang. So if you think about, in essence, what is going on, this is actually standard Buddhist practice, converting in shrine a local deity, a territorial deity. And for, we can have a number of variations, who should you put inside the Qielan Tang. Then, I can give you other example, written in Baizang Qinggui, and so on. So like Hua Guang, like Dragon King, they are listed as Qielan Shen. So this is example from this temple. Let me see, do I have? Anyway, so it's somewhere here, I think. Somewhere here. Oh, here. Sorry. Here. Somewhere here. Qielanshen. There's a temple of Ming Dynasty. So Guan Yu is here. The prince is here. And Erskine Temple, Erskine altar inside of local shrine. So the territorial deity in China, in Indian originally maybe just one yaksha or one naga figure, but in China we would have two levels of understanding of this concept. You have a local deity like Long Wang. Or like some kind of deity worshipped in the whole region, people worshiping them, or like Maju, for instance, like Maju was in the whole region. Then for the particular plot, this place of the temple, this very specific unit of place, you would have earth god. So you should also have a shrine for the earth god. And then, of course, they were worshipped regularly. We know this, this existed from very early time until the present day. This is from Shuanglin Temple, how you have, see here and here, one of them is earth god temple. Here. This is the location. This is the photo of the temple, the earth god temple here. This is the one I showed you before. An earth god temple also here. There are several sections. In this house. One section is earth god. And this is in Shanxi province, Yunjushan temple actually in practice. Today, when I visited, I saw a earth god altar inside temple. And next one would be the group. So the group would be something very Chinese. How to put it in this way? We now will see such kind of things in other areas other than China. Think about all those protective deities. They supposed to be originally in like Indian deities with very strange names. Sometimes we translate these names with meaning. Sometimes we transliterate this, those names with only sound, and then we have a bunch of different names. We are very confused. In the tradition of the Chinese, we do not want to offend any deity. We want to include them. So from very early time in China, we developed a tradition that we have a group of deities to represent all deities. So, for instance, in the Tang Dynasty and the 5 dynasties, we developed the group called Tianlong Babu. In our understanding, Indian deities, they are classified by 8 types. So they are the names of 8 types. So we have depictions. We developed, our own iconography of Tianlong Babu. And then from the Song Dynasty on, we, based on the Sutra of Golden Light, developed sort of a group of maybe 20, 24 deities. Most of the deities were mentioned in this text. as sort of a deity group called 诸天. We put them in the main hall. So, for instance, this is 智化寺, Jin Dynasty. The main hall, you have on the main altar 5 Buddhas. On the two sides, you have those deities. So for the deities in the kitchen, we notice, somehow set up a deity in the kitchen is a tradition, present in both Indian and in China. For instance, according to Yi Jing, when he traveled to India, and according to his description, Tang China, Tang people followed the Indian tradition. They set up image of Mahakala as a deity in the kitchen. So this is according to him. And of course, if you go to Buddhist temples today, the deities in the kitchen is not Mahakala. So a major change occurred in the Yuan dynasty. We then set up, there was a legendary story occurred in Shaolin Si. So according to this legend that King Nara later on replaced Mahakala, served as the god in the kitchen later on. So this is from Shaolin Shizi, King Nara image. And then we came to this last category, like you may have a hall, dedicated, independent hall dedicated to images of God or of deity. This is the earliest temple survived in China, Nancan Si. So this is their temple plan. So can you see a Longwang Dian? Can you see a Yanwang Dian? So Yanwang Dian, you probably have Yama there. Longwang Dian, that's the local dragon king there. And here's the Qielan. So this would be where you have those deities. Today, very often Chinese temples, you only have the empty house. You don't have, the original images. So for that reason, I went to temple, get the tears to see, in the past originally. So I can list a couple of examples. Hall or independent hall dedicated to here. This one would be Naga King. This one would be Naga King. And in this temple at Tiantai Mountain, you have Xuanbi Zhenjun. Xuanbi Zhenjun would be the title of Ji Jing, historical figure deified in Wuyue area, would be a territorial deity of this area, and Guan Yu. This, so this exactly would be the practice I explained to you, how territorial deity should have a shrine inside the Buddhist temple. This is Guangsheng temple, and this is Guangsheng Xiasi, Guangsheng Xiasi. Here, number 4 is Mingying Wang Dian. Mingying Wang, the title of Naga King, Longwang. So this is how it is so common, and it's actually following the Indian tradition. This is Shaolin Si. I also showed you before. So if you go to the very back, you have a 娘娘殿, dedicated to Wu Ying Niang Niang. Wu Ying Niang Niang, a local deity, a territorial deity. So this is, in general, the practice. So a few comments before we conclude. If we compare to the very early stage in India, those deities, they provide protection to local lay community. In China, in our practice is we also have the worship of Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva offers very generous protection to the lay community. So, something slightly different. Also, how to understand what happened in the Chinese arrangement. You have, the Vajrapani, Heavenly King at the gateway, and the arrangement. It's the same idea that the temple represents the word of the Buddha. In India, that's a stupa. So represent this physical mountain Sumeru structure. So what really on the mind of the Chinese would be, what is the word of the Buddha? It's the Buddha and all his entourage, Buddhist figures, all Bodhisattvas and Buddhas and Buddhist deities included. And what would be the best way to represent them? Very often in the beginning of the sutra, you would have all the deities, all the Buddhists, Bodhisattvas and the Buddhas included, coming over for the Buddha's teaching. This is called the Fo Hui, Fa Hui. And in Buddhist art, eventually, there's a type of a representation. You can see it's iconic, you can see it's maybe like a narrative. It's based on the introduction of every Mahayana sutra. Eventually, this became sort of like the whole pantheon, the whole entourage of the Buddha's word, Fo Hui, Fa Hui. So this would be a standard one of Shakyamuni. This one is coming from the very famous long Buddhist scroll of Fan Xiang Juan from Dali. So you have Buddha, the 10 monks, major Bodhisattvas, attending Bodhisattvas. Here are the group of deity. Here they are, Tianlong Babu. Here you have Four Heavenly King. Here you have Vajrapani. So this can be sort of the center, depiction on the altar, or like a center depiction of a Jingbian painting. Then you take this as a basic framework for Buddhist temple later time. You convert it into a three-dimensional temple. So at the very edge, when you going into the Buddha's word, that's Vajrapani. You continue going, then that's the Heavenly King. So this is the structure. Then all others would be in the main hall. So anyway, so this is my brief conclusion. Actually, I already explained all this. So in principle, adopting local deities, heavenly deities as Buddhist protector, setting up their images in Buddhist temples. In principle, this is a Buddhist practice. It's the practice from the very beginning, from Shakyamuni's time and until the Chinese, Chinese for the Chinese Buddhists. So this is following the same tradition, but we do have differences. So if you think about local deity, so therefore the local deity in China would be Chinese local deity, the Chinese earth god. So we have that, and in essence, this is also following the Buddhist principle. Also, slightly different would be in China, we have this consistent iconographic scheme. This is probably Chinese, and also somehow like maybe more emphasizing of the different categories. Maybe that's more Chinese, and with some little bit of new idea and the new group of deity like the Kishtagaba Dizang and the Shidian Yanwang would be purely Chinese, and the Tianlongbabu purely Chinese, 20Zutian purely Chinese. So that's the very end. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Tianshu.
You're welcome.
It's a very interesting and inspiring talk, and very interesting. I have never thought of these kind of things. Yes, you studied the non-Buddhist deities in Buddhist temples. Yeah. I just have some comments. By studying these non-Buddhist deities in Buddhist temples, just a manifestation of the Buddhist principles. Usually in my lectures and also studies, I told the student that Buddhism is an open-minded religion, a religion tolerant to all different kinds of ideas and thoughts, particularly started from India to all other countries. So that's why in the Buddhist text, usually they say that whatever is well said is said by the Buddha. So this is one of the very important principles in Buddhism. That means whatever the Buddha said is well said. Of course, it's interesting, but Buddhism are open to all different cultures and respect all different kind of cultures. That's why in India, Buddhism respects Indian cultures, assimilated most of these important deities, as you demonstrated already, non-Buddhistic, but they are assimilated into Buddhism. Or you say converted, you use the word converted, converted into Buddhism. So this tradition continues to China. Even Chinese local deities also assimilated into Buddhism. And I would say this is also demonstrate the Buddhist idea of respect local culture. So when Buddhism introduced into different cultures, Buddhism does not, destroy the local culture, but on the other hand, assimilate. That's why, I don't know whether you have been to Sri Lanka, for example. No,
it's on my wish list.
Yeah, in future you come to Sri Lanka, you will have a look. All their temples, they have shrine rooms of the Buddhas, they have pagodas, they have Bodhi trees. These are important Buddhist symbols. But in the temple, they also have a special shrine room and where you find local deities. It's very interesting. That's why the local Buddhist followers, what they do is that when they come to the Buddhist temples, first, of course, they would worship the Buddha and also pagodas and Bodhi trees. But interestingly, when they are about to leave the temple, then they go to the local deities, also pray. So this is very interesting, So this just demonstrating, as you said, non-Buddhist deities all are assimilated. So this is a demonstration what from your studies clearly the Buddhist idea of tolerance and protection of the local cultures. That's why when Buddhism introduced into Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Myanmar, particularly these three countries, Buddhism becomes the protector of the local culture. That is a very important idea. That's why I come to China. Chinese deities are also assimilated into Buddhism. It's very interesting. Yeah.
Yes, I see. I received one question.
Yeah.
One question. could you elucidate about the Jianzai deity who oversees vegetarian meals? Why do monasteries need them for? There are local deities who can protect the monasteries for every matter. So this is sort of like about the essence of how to say of religious practice. So you let me say it in this way. You have a Buddha already. You have so many Bodhisattvas already. Can't they protect you enough? Of course, right? And any one deity, if you think about, like you have Wei Tuo at the doorway, would be Wei Tuo powerful enough to oversee or like to protect you? Of course, but somehow in humans' mind that other deities also existed. It is like we project the word of deities like our own society, like we have government, we have different positions, different offices, different functions. So the deity, our concept of deity developed as our society developed. So you just understand this way. You understand this way. So what if there already exists this deity? So this is the point. The deities, they already existed. Then therefore we need to get along with them, respect them. We make offerings. In return, we expect sort of like a harmony, a protection. So it's not like in terms of power, then it seems that you already have a temple protector that should be covered. That's this is my my explanation. I hope. Who is this? Change. So did I answer your question? Did I explain well?
Yeah, there is a second question.
Wow.
Similar.
Yeah.
Liu Zhelang.
Pre-Tang. What is the question? Briefly introduce the image setting in pre-Tang Chinese monastery. For pre-Tang sort of a Chinese monastery, we do not have much sort of knowledge. The extended temple from the Tang Dynasty, we have also caves, but the caves, they are not exactly the same in the same way as temple. We did find, through archaeological work, we find like early temple, but like the temple layout. So therefore, we know how the basic layout of Chinese temple developed. For instance, we may have very similar to Korean, Japanese temple, the early temples, like the Stupa, the Golden Hall in sort of a courtyard, something like that. But the problem would be when you see the layout you do not know which room, which place you may have an image of a deity. So this part definitely we have no record and no knowledge. If we look at the temple, if we look at the caves, Buddhist caves, we know like at the doorway, entranceway, see like the earliest Buddhist caves in central China would be Yungang. Yungang dated to the second half of the 5th century. So we do not now have any knowledge of prior to that. So in the second half of the 5th century, we do see sort of deities depicted at the doorway. But at the doorway, we didn't set up the concept who should be the deity at doorway. In general, they should be the spirit king, Shen Wang image. But they can also be like a sort of an Indian deity. We sometimes have inscription. This is in the pre-Tang period. All others we do not have any record. So this is to the question of pre-Tang temple. So this question was very good. Okay.
Yeah, I also have a question.
Please.
The present setting of Chinese monastery, first shrine rule we call Tianwangdian. You have 4 guardian kings. It's started from the Song dynasty. Before the Song, there's no such kind of setting.
Yeah, I tried very hard work on this. I've been working on 4 heavenly kings already for years. So the Chinese temple, how to say, like, it's sort of my like in the reading of in text. So the term of Tianwangdian, when I track them, this would be something of Song dynasty. Song dynasty.
Yeah, from the Song dynasty.
Song dynasty. Yeah. Because in the record of the Tang dynasty, when they mention like paintings or good artwork of the Tang dynasty, they still mention like, in which place you would see the heavenly king image is still at the doorway of something. They never mention the term of like a hall for heavenly kings. So this up to maybe like the end of Tang dynasty, then started from the Song dynasty, I began to encounter for heavenly king hall.
Yeah, do you think is this influenced by the Chinese tradition? Because the Chinese tradition, the Menshen, the guardian god at the doors, started during the Tang dynasty, I think. And this tradition also assimilated into Buddhism. In Song dynasty, you have the 4 heavenly kings to guard the temple as guardian gods. What do you think?
They definitely, this 4 heavenly king and a door guardian was mutually influenced each other from very early time. Actually, not the Song dynasty. Actually, that's the Nanbei Chao already. Because for the residential building and the constructive temple, we do not have any hard evidence of the early door guardian image, but in caves we have. In caves, in tombs. In tombs we have door guardians from very early time from the Han dynasty. So in the Han dynasty, the door guardian would dress, like 交刃, the Chinese clothes, holding the groom, 拿着那个笤帚, or like holding like maybe like a sort of like armored like weapons. So there was this long tradition to have a door guardian at the door, depicted really on the door in the tomb context. And also, if we think about a door guardian in residential building, we know they have a Taomu, may not be like, how to say, anthropomorphic images. What I mean is the hard evidence of those Chinese door guardian became more like a Buddhist heavenly king. This occurred in one of the like Northern Qi tomb, I think, or Northern Zhou tomb. The image suddenly became like heavenly king. The appearance, the setting. So this is definitely, and also why in Dunhuang they were depicted at a doorway. It has something to do maybe what you mentioned as door guardian. So, so when the first heavenly king appeared in Bahut, although they are at the doorway, they were not really served as door guardian. At the doorway, you also have Yaksha, Yakshi, Naga, those deities. So they were not really meant to be door guardian. They are sort of like a guardian the four directions.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
There is a question you
can
at this chat room.
Okay.
The same person.
Okay.
NHX.
If one takes refuge in the Buddha, do not take refuge in deities, demons, etc. Is it somehow this is a very good question. So you have to understand what does it mean by take refuge. So when deities were worshipped in the context of Buddhist practice, people didn't take refuge. Didn't take a refuge in those deities. So, what's Buddhism fundamentally about is the salvation of your soul. Eventually, your soul free from this world of samsara. This is ultimate goal. Or if you think about religion, not popular religion or shamanism, religion in the world, the fundamental concern, the essence is afterlife. It's all about soul. See the question, it's the same. It's the afterlife, where do you go? So in this concept, in overall, although we use the word religion, only one word, you have to think about those institutional religion, which you have a founder, you have doctrine, you have standard doctrinal book, like Buddhism, like sort of a Christian. Then you have other sort of popular religion. You have accept natural spirits. They just exist. Whether you exist or not, they just present. They exist. It's about like whether how you attitude towards them. They are maybe more powerful than you are, since you are in the same space. They are the sort of a lord of this space. So therefore, your life, your prosperity is under sort of like in their charge. So therefore, this is your relationship with them. However, they cannot help you with free from the samsara. And afterlife, where do you go? So take refuge is the ultimately, where do you go? after in your afterlife. So in this essence, all the religion in the world is the same. They are exclusive. So therefore, in Buddhism, why, see, in the beginning I mentioned why I gave you these two concepts in the beginning. You have to divide the deities into Deva and the deities on the earth. Deva, like Brahma, in terms of his worshippers, they consider Brahma would be the ultimate God, who represents the very essence, eternal, something unchanged, very eternal essence of this whole existence. So the Buddha clearly denied that. You shouldn't worship them, you shouldn't take refuge under them. The best result for you to worship Brahma, worship for Heavenly King, worshiping Indra would be after death. You reborn in Brahma's heaven if you are also sort of a Brahman priest. The best would be you reborn in Indra's heaven. The best, if you worship for Heavenly King, you reborn in for Heavenly King's heaven. And if you reborn there, you are still in the cycle of rebirth. So this is the fundamental difference. It's not contradicted with each other. They are sort of in Buddhist concept or in Buddhist definition, the deities, they are also Buddhist followers. It's the whole. It's a sort of a whole community. You know how Buddhist community, you have the 4 bodies: monk body, nun body, layman, lay women. So the lay community also include deities. So this is the relationship of the But of course, in terms of this is a Buddhist perspective. In Hindu perspective, they consider their deity as sort of the highest, represent the essence of the cosmos, and Shakyamuni Buddha is only like a sage manifestation of their deity. So this is, all about your perspective.
Yeah.
So very good question. Very good question.
Yeah. Yes, this question, I think it's a little bit confused with refugians Buddha and worship of deities. These are different kind of things, actually. And as I said earlier, Buddhism assimilated these kind of deities into Buddhism. In fact, they do not replace the Buddha and Bodhisattvas. So that's a different. And this again, it shows the Buddhist respect to local culture and local people's traditions. Therefore, although they are included into the Buddhist temples, but they are not respected like the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Quite different. Yeah.
So the second half of the question, or we can think that local deities as Dharma protector are Bodhisattvas. So Bodhisattvas also has sort of like several levels of sort of definition. So in essence, what Bodhisattva means, someone already a Buddhist, made a vow on the path, aiming to become a Buddha, aiming at the full enlightenment, the complete enlightenment. Once they are on the path, they are Buddha to be, so therefore they are in the category of Bodhisattva. So if you think in this general sort of like a definition, then yes, all Buddhists, Mahayana Buddhists, they are Bodhisattvas. They are Bodhisattvas, but they are not what Mahayana Buddhism, we have the cult of Bodhisattvas. Those Bodhisattvas are the sort of like Avalokitesvara, Manjushri, Guanyin, Wenshu, Samantabhaja, Kishtagava. So they are the Bodhisattvas already sort of achieved their highest level achievement. They have only one step left to become a Buddha, but they purposely postpone that for the sake of saving sentient beings. So they are, we have a very specific group of these sort of Maha Bodhisattva figures as saving sentient beings, sort of as like their duty, as their performance in Buddhism. So if we look at that kind of concept, then it's slightly different. The local deities is more like, you know, they already existed before human beings, and they have longer life, longer lifespan. So whether your job is whether you accept them or not. You, of course, you can choose to not accept them, but they are still there. They are in principle, they are more powerful than you are, and they do not take like helping you as their job, as their duty. They can do it, they may not do it. You need to make maybe like make offering, make wishes, do some exchange. Theoretically, Bodhisattva would not really do those kind of bargain. They are compassionate, very compassionate. But a very good question, very good question.
Yeah, I think, yeah, there are no any other questions. And time also up. So just conclude today's lectures. Thank you so much, Tianshu, for this very interesting and also inspiring lectures. And I can say that the time is not enough. In fact, maybe in the future, we can invite you to give another series of lectures, giving more details. For today, we just conclude this lecture. And on behalf of the Center of Buddhist Studies, I thank you and thank you for your compassion to make all these two important lectures. Thank you so much.
Also, thank you everyone for attending the lecture. We are doing very well with the time. Yeah. Hopefully one day we can see each other in person. Bye, yes. Everyone.
Okay, thank you so much. We will meet in person.
Yeah, hopefully
it improves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.